Next, we'd like to introduce you to the body which, yeah, it probably, yeah, that's probably easiest. So what we'd like to do now is introduce you to the End User Advisory Group, which is the part of OSM that gives the steer and direction to the OSM project. This won't be just me, Andy Reid. I'm from BT and I chair the End User Advisory Group. We have Tetsuya Nakamura from Cable Labs and Diego Lopez from Telefonica, and so we'll mix and match a little bit in presenting this. So firstly, we are operator-led, so that we start from the position of the users of the software rather than the producers of the software. So we are concerned to make sure that the software that we produce has got a clear direction and purpose, and it's not just there because somebody thought this might be a good idea. It is being driven because we actually see and understand the requirements and the use that we're going to put it to. So we set out the release requirements, we review all the various proposals for new features, and we are involved in that feature selection process for each release. We also discuss a longer term vision as to where we see this going, because as Francisco Javier has already said, this is very much a work in progress. We don't see that orchestration is a mature, easy process as it is. We are learning, but in doing that, we're also setting out and understanding a longer term picture. So we set these in our discussions in two phases. So ones that are focused on each release and discussions that are looking a bit further out. The primary objective, what we're really about, is automating the processes that currently we do a lot of things manually. And I think just to go all the way back, to understand why are we all here, what's happened is virtualization enables us, it gives us a platform whereby we can install things remotely and by software without the need for physical intervention. That opens up a whole variety of opportunities for automation. But without that virtualization platform, there's no prospect of automating any of the processes we're doing. So, put another way round, what we're trying to automate is currently done manually, and that's not easy. So we understand the complexities of what we're trying to do. With OSM, so in terms of understanding the overall key objectives, what we're after and what we see is two really parallel objectives. One is we want a good industrial strength code base, reference implementation that says this is what orchestration is, and we can know and understand what it is because we have got our hands dirty with it. But the other side is, while we're doing that, there's a lot that we can learn. As I was saying, this is a process that is far from mature. We're trying to automate things that are currently all done manually. That's not easy. So we can learn as we're doing by actually having insight into the code. But one final point is, and one of the things that we see happening in really across the industry, is there is a huge temptation to solve interfacing problems by just extending your scope. Oh, that's going to be a hard interface to deal with, to interwork, so why don't we just incorporate what's behind it into our project so we don't have to worry about the interoperability of that interface. Now, we don't want to do that. This is an orchestration project, and as I'll talk a little bit later, That's one of the key things that is our motivation as a company in BT. We see that we will have to interoperate with a whole variety of different systems from different people, some open source, some proprietary. We can't just simply try and solve the problem by incorporating it into one great big project. So as OSM, we're very keen not to be all things to all people. We're an orchestrator and only an orchestrator. So just on picking on those two key themes, first, the automation, an industrial strength orchestrator. The long-term vision, as I say, is all about automation, and it's automation at the different timescales, so both onboarding and instantiation and in life. And Francesco Javier has already talked about where we are on each of those phases. And we'll hear more on that too. But it's also across the different layers of orchestration. So it's network service in network service, VNF, virtual machine, so then talking down to the VIMs, talking down to the SDN controllers for virtual links. There's an awful lot that needs to be automated, and one of the things that we are already seeing, it was right there in the beginning, is that the way I've always put it is, when we're doing the automation, there are three key things we've got to do. Instantiate the elements, link them together, but the hard one is to configure them in context. And that's what our VNF control agent deals with. That's the hard one. That's all got to have a level of policy, and it's all got to be automated. And that's got to be executable. So a lot of the configuration that currently we take for granted, it's all done manually by expert people. That's where a lot of the automation problem lies. And as I was saying before, it's got to be heterogeneous. We can't just simply solve this problem by trying to make the project bigger and incorporate everything into one project. So the other side, the learning by doing, and this was a slide that if anybody was here last year, it's still as true now as it was then. What we see happens at the moment is we have the standards process that writes standards. So for example, the network service descriptor, the VNF descriptor, IFA 11 and 14, they come out with the standards. They then go into systems development, which at the moment is largely proprietary by vendors. They then provide us systems as service providers, which we then integrate into our networks and use. However, it's not just quite as simple as that waterfall process, because from our point of view as service providers, that systems development piece is opaque, it's proprietary, we don't see what's going on. And actually there's a lot of insight going on in there that really affects the way we use the systems that we're not getting to see. The great strength of open source is it's an open circular feedback process. So the standards, the systems development, our operations, we can all run it in a cycle. That's what one of the key strengths we see, one of our key motivations for being involved in OSM, is we can see how the system is working from the inside, understand how it's working, so we can now be intelligent in the way we acquire our systems, integrate them and operate them. What I'd like to do now is we've got three different perspectives that we're going to say, little bits of application area from our three different company points of view, and then I'll bring it together with some closing thoughts at the end. Sorry, I'm jumping my gun. So just finally, Francesco Javier has already dealt with some of these. Some of the things from Release 3, some of the key features, these were things that we highlighted fairly early on. Some of these things were on the wish list a year ago. These are now being delivered in Release 3. So since we've already had them and we'll go through, I won't go through them in more detail. So these are some of the features that we're concerned about in BT. And I just sort of put this together fairly quickly to give an illustration of what we're concerned with at the moment. At the moment, we're in the process of acquiring NFV infrastructure. So we've been focused on the bottom and acquiring both the hardware and the VIM associated with the infrastructure. And so we're going out and we've got an industry consultation at the moment where we're looking to acquire it. Well, what's already apparent to us is however much we might want to try and get this uniform, we have got a lot of existing systems out there that even with the different environments we've got, it's unlikely that we'll get a single, simple, homogeneous infrastructure solution. Even if we look at our main application areas, on the one side we've got big mobile infrastructure, packet core, IMS, and so on, where actually it's a reasonably monolithic application that needs to scale and up and down, where scaling is a lot of the big issue. Then we've got an edge problem, be it mobile edge or even more business premises edge, where scale isn't so much the problem, distribution is a problem, and chaining is a problem. We want to be able to flexibly chain applications. And we think that it may or may not be realistic to say we've got one homogeneous solution even for those two main divisions. So we're expecting at least a level of heterogeneous solutions in the orange, in the infrastructure. Some of these we're seeing it may be hard to involve some level of proprietary orchestration. And so, for example, one of the subtleties that you get into is where you look at the architecture and you get some of these big VNFs and they come with their VNF manager. Well, you know what? When you look at them, some of them look quite like an orchestrator. So one of the things that we're seeing is that actually we may want our generic NFV orchestrator, but it's got to talk to something that looks pretty like an orchestrator. So understanding that the orchestrator may not be able to talk directly to VIMs dealing only at a virtual machine or virtual link level. We may need to be able to talk at a network service type of level. And that's certainly the case when we look up, because we've already got end-to-end orchestration. We've already got our business systems for customer facing. So a lot of what we're concerned about at the moment is how now, so having looked at the bottom, making good progress there, we know what we've got at the top because that's existing. How now do we fit the orchestration in the middle, in the architecture, not as a standalone new system, but as a new piece of architecture in an existing systems base, systems estate. So that's a little example of where we are at BT. Now Tetsuya, says from Cable Labs.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tetsuya Nakamura, so work in the Cable Labs. And today I'd like to introduce a very, very specific use case, cable-specific use case in terms of the virtual CCAP. CCAP stands for Converged Cable Access Platform. That's an integration between CMTS and Edge QAM. So it means CCAP, Converged Cable Access Platform, enables to provide with both of the internet data access as well as video streaming and converge and RF processing from video streaming into QAM. So CCAP is one of the cable-specific target for virtualization. And in this figure, I will show our latest activity in the cable lab with some partners vendor, including Intel and CASA. And you can see, so this is a kind of a very future cable network looks like. Maybe many of you understand cable operator provided with cable access from a cable modem and a set-top box in their customer house and terminate in the head end in the CMTS. CMTS stands for cable modem termination system. But future cable business is more than that because many of the cable operators, both of the US and in Asia and also Europe, are very keen to dive into a mobile space in the 5G era especially. So in this particular scenario is to have some such a initial feasibility study how cable operator can leverage ongoing existing footprint in their DOCSIS HFC network to be more efficiently expanding a coverage area to dive into a mobile space. So this is something like virtualizing multi-access network capability, and top side, left top side is CASA provided with a small cell base station, and bottom side is a very legacy cable modem in the consumer promise. That's Intel provided with that. And the middle side is RPD. RPD stands for remote PHY devices. That's DOCSIS PHY processing, including RF processing. Signaling is handled by a fiber node in the middle. And right side is a more head end. Head end is like more edge access core data center in the cable network, like very similar structure with in eNodeB and MME or P gateway in mobile architecture. But in this sense, so those kind of cable-specific DOCSIS compliant CCAP and the corresponding remote PHY devices is communicated via existing HFC, and then not only just a legacy DOCSIS data traffic, but also new small cell mobile traffic can be passed through via a fiber node and also a head end. And finally, in the head end side is not only just a legacy cable processing module, but also mobile core network, including EPC and some gateway and so on, can be consumed and can be executable on top of the exact same platform. That's a big challenge for a cable operator to how they can leverage the existing and the transparent and more converged platform on top of that. So how both of the mobile and the cable VNL can be on board. So from that perspective, we are very keen to leverage how OSM especially can be consumed in the context of the cable scenario, like a virtual CCAP. So, you can, Francis Fabier already introduced a couple of significant progress in terms of Release 3 is coming soon. One of the big significant improvement and enhancement in cable point of view will be, I can share my two preferences. And one is service assurance. Obviously, one of the very good progress from Release 2 and Release 3 in the OSM will be more, network service scaling in the add and remove the VNA on demand. Because given that you can see, so a converged such a cable and a mobile network will be very, very crucial to control based on the traffic. Because sometimes many of the consumer is pushing and receiving a packet via small cell. But other side, other time, or other location, it might be more legacy cable modem in the coaxial and HFC network. So in this sense, it's quite crucial for operator to control based on the on-demand traffic to balance the capability of the both of a particular VNA. And sometimes you need to have a more scaling out and scaling in and out. Those kind of things is a more dynamical way is very, very important. So in this sense, we really want to expect to how to consume such a new capability in the OSM Release 3. And the second point is obviously security, but a more particular saying that's access control. Because you can see that's a big difference. Because originally I came from a mobile industry, and because I belong to NTT Docomo for a while. And one of the big difference I realized is cable operator each other is not competitive to each other. Because everything is a service domain, is a regional area domain. And all the operator focus on some particular area and complementary collaborate each other in the other cable operator. So in this sense, if we can leverage and realize such a converged network in the 5G era, not only just a legacy cable access, but also mobile. So most important aspect for a cable operator is to secure the roam in and out. So how to share their resource, how to achieve their resource sharing, including a network slicing, is very, very crucial. So, of course, to do that, I think one of the significant aspects in this coming release 3 features include the, as Francois mentioned briefly, access control based on who can manage and which cable operator's customer roam into other cable operators region. So those kind of access control is one of the future too close to a more carrier grade in the context of the cable network. So that's very briefly, but this is a very hot topic, and this demo and POC is just disclosed last month, in August. So it's still a very, very hot topic, and we are very keen to leverage the OSM in the context.
Try to be fast. Basically, what as Andy was saying at the beginning, we try to be the kind of active users that we, as far as we can, and we're trying to shape and try to steer as much as we can the evolution of OSM. In particular, one of my responsibilities in Telefonica is precisely taking care of joint research projects, most of them in the framework of EU-funded research programs and in collaboration with the USA, China, Brazil, and other parts of the world. So the idea is that when you start the research projects, well, open source is, on the one hand, open source is a natural way of making available your results. Whatever you have, you can prove, and you can prove your results. You can try to widen the usage of it, to increase the to make it reproducible. That is something that is essential when you are doing research, is showing that your research can be applied elsewhere as well. And well, try even to maximize the impact, and this is something, one of the key performance indicators that the Commission, the European Commission uses, is precisely trying to assess your impact on standardization, and this is the idea. So on the one hand, contributing to an open source project is an ideal situation for a research project. On the other hand, taking advantage of the opportunities of research projects is very important, I would say, in general, for making open source evolve. It's not only about having a good set of development tools or a complete CI/CD pipeline. It's about as well to being able to stretch the scope, to explore a little bit beyond the scope that you have defined. And well, why not? Testing and checking out some additional scenarios and technologies and having a look at what happening around and how these new technologies can be applied in the environment of the projects. So, well, the fact is that when it comes to network function and service orchestration and NFV, or even not necessarily NFV as we know it, but new ways of doing NFV, is part of our hot research topics, is something that is in the list of the research goals of many research organizations, and well, in the research goals of organizations like mine as well. And well, 5G is the flagship for it. It's something that, what do you do if you want to move everything to the edge, and instead of having a few instances of every kind of function, what happens when you have several millions of instances having to run? What happens when you have a highly distributed infrastructure? What would happen when you have millions of different devices? Or what would happen if you want to virtualize as well as much as you can radio access, for example? So it's one of the flagships, and it's the main goal that we are considering right now. And well, for doing so, we have defined, they are not even defined. We have set a set of very simple rules of engagement of a research project with OSM and of OSM with a research project. And first is, well, it's open source. Take the software, do whatever you feel with it, play with it, rewrite some parts, throw away another part, give it a try, move it, try to apply it to a completely unusual scenario, do whatever you like. When you have something that can be discussed, it's not just a simple idea, you have something that can be shared with others, come back to the community, we'll welcome you, In the case in which Telefonica is involved, I have been acting as a sort of the bridge between the community and the project. Come to the community, make your case, normally come to a plenary, and then people like Javier, like Andy, like Adrian will be looking at you with bad eyes and trying to find what have you really brought on the table, whether it has interest or not. If you make your case well, then you will be invited to bring it, and the only thing that you will be asked is about to abide to the upstream community practice. So you will be in the position of, and this is simply as it is. Even if you stop at the second point, even if you come to the community and the community doesn't say that there is a clear opportunity for that, you will be in the position of having influenced the community and making people start thinking about what to do in the future. In that case, there is a value. Well, just to illustrate the current initiatives that we are thinking about, the first one was cited by Javier because it's our ideal case is this emulator that came from the Sonata project. They came with a very interesting idea, something that they had developed. They had developed originally they have developed a general one for their own environment. We encouraged them to try to adapt it to OSM. They were very successful, among other things, because they are very brilliant people. They came to a meeting, and now it's part of Release 3, and this is something that makes us happy, and that I'm personally using as an example continuously whenever I engage with other projects. Tell them, hey, look, the Sonata guys brought their emulator, and now it's part of an OSM release. Apart from that, there are people working on supporting different DevOps lifecycle by using mediation elements. If you were this morning here, I was mentioning this precisely, how you can achieve this mediation DevOps by independent organizations that are providing DevOps, and normally several developing organizations and one single operating organization, how you consolidate this by means of mediation. There are projects that are considering precisely how you incorporate verification and validation, how you incorporate proper testing before you put the result inside the DevOps lifecycle, defining the tests, automating the tests, and this is something that my beloved TTCN, I guess you don't know about TTCN, what TTCN is. How many of you know about what TTCN is? Hey, prize for you. No, Silvia, you're out of the contest. Good. So, well, and this is where we can automatize the test definition, text execution as part of the life cycle. Multi-whatever, we're making tests on multi-vim, multi-domain, multi-tenant, multi-tier, multi-whatever, so we can stretch the limits of what OSM is supporting right now. The mix of intent declarations when dealing with descriptors is more about building, incorporating descriptors in intent declaration rather than the other way around. And there is a project in which we have a sort of a compiler that from intent declarations can build service descriptors. And well, this is something that we had to talk for Release 4. I have not shown it to you just yet, I guess. So we're on security enhancements, and this is from this QC is quantum cryptography, just in case you had not noticed. So we are thinking about quantum cryptography to, in general, any mechanism that would help us in making improve auditability, making it as more assured as possible. Attestation mechanisms for both functions and network graphs. Well, finally, as you can imagine, things relating with machine learning and data set production. I think, and I insisted this morning, and let me insist on this, that when we're talking about applying whatever you call it, AI or whatever, the important thing is that the data has to be accurate and has to be timely. In both phases, well, in the three phases, when you're training the system, when you're verifying the system, and when you're operating the system. And this is a great challenge that we have, in which we are working as well, and we hope to bring something for OSM to integrate anytime soon. And this is, just to close, I will let Andy again.
Well, just to close with some concluding thoughts. And this actually was came out of one of our face-to-face meetings, some of the thoughts that came out of that. Currently, what we're finding is that not just us, but everybody is finding that they're doing some sort of extensions to most of the standards. It's already said, I think it's been said quite a bit, actually we're using interfacing primarily to OpenStack APIs with all sorts of different extensions, different generations and so on. One of the things that we noticed, one of the things that as OSM we're particularly pleased with, particularly that came out in the plug test, is that we have been able to integrate with a wide variety of different OpenStack variants. And there isn't one simple defining OpenStack solution. We're finding that the NS descriptors, VNF descriptors, there are things that we're finding quite hard to fit in that we know we need into those descriptors. That's part of feedback that we've been making to NFV. So there are things that we're finding directly in the standards, and we're very active in providing feedback. Maybe what I'll do is jump on to the second last one at this point as well, because one of the things that we notice in that is that who actually has the change control over particular parts of the standards isn't always that obvious. And it is quite a difficult thing that we're noticing. So what we're dealing with, you've got Tosca involved, you've got IFA, Sol, there may well be ITF with Yang, OpenStack, OPNFV, ourselves, plus a variety of other proprietary extensions, all of involved, and actually coordinating who owns what change is something that we've encountered as being something that we want to put our minds to and try and improve. The network service, what we're finding, one of the things that we've been discussing is, as I showed in our particular example, at the moment there's kind of a clean split. The network service tends to deal with topology, the VNF tends to deal with resource. But if you're going to do network service and network service, you're going to have some way of making that contained network service look a bit like a VNF. And it probably needs to say something about capacity that has some relationship to the resource that it's going to have to require. So how big is this network service? What capacity is it going to have? Then the larger network service is going to have to know something about it. I think just as an observation is, going back to my little slide of the waterfall, standards tend to be set up on a basis of being at the top of the waterfall. And one of the things we observe is something we can improve on as an industry is that feedback process. So if the standards find a way of giving a better door to getting that feedback and that change process going, I think that would help us all. And also, coupled with that to some extent, is understanding that we've had quite a lot of discussion of information modeling, data modeling, all the relationship between that. And one of the things that we are also encountering is we need to take an abstract view. When was that abstract view formed? Was it at specification time of the standard, so into the standard are abstractions baked in? Or do you want to form your abstraction post hoc, after the event, in which case it's a lot harder. Now, actually, most of the abstractions we want to form tend to come up post hoc. So there are quite a number of issues here that we're encountering that we're keen to feed back into the industry. So these are some of our final concluding thoughts that we offer back, and as our end user advisory group. So thank you very much for listening.